guys, it's Isosceles, and today I will be teaching the topic about proofs concerning isosceles triangle. In today's topic, we will be proving that these two sides, the legs of the isosceles triangles, are congruent, and also the bases, right here, on E and F, are also congruent. First, we will prove that the bases are congruent. We will do this by making the isosceles triangles into two triangles. So, we want to prove that the angles D, E, F is congruent to angle D, F, E. We will also be doing this by using the properties of triangle congruency, using SSS, side, 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 which means if each side of a triangle is congruent to each side of another triangle. And AAS, angle, angle, side, which means two angles and a non-included side in another triangle, which makes it congruent. Alright, so the first step of making this into two triangles is by making a midpoint between the line E and F. We will call the midpoint G. From there, we could draw a line straight from G to D. Line DG is shared between these two triangles, which is called reflective property. Because this is shared between the two triangles, we know that this is congruent. And because we made the midpoint, we know that EG, line EG, it's a bad G, is congruent to GF. And there we go. That is the triangle congruency property SSS. Side, 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 side. Because, and now that we know that triangles D, E, G is congruent to D,
triangle.
G, F, we can now assume that the bases are also going to be congruent. Now that we know that the bases are congruent, now let's figure out how we could prove that the legs of the isosceles is congruent. So, lines DE congruent to line DF. We will again be splitting the triangle into two triangles, but instead of marking a midpoint between the lines EF, we will be using altitude. We can imagine that there's something on top and we drop it to the bottom, and that's the base. So from D, we could use an altitude line. That is similar to a midpoint in a way. We'll name that D. Okay, from this, we know that makes two right angles. So, angle DGE is also congruent to angle DGF because they're both right triangles. And from the problem before this, we also know that the angles here are also congruent. So, triangle congruency property AAS, angle, angle, and because of the line we have in the middle, this is now a shared side. So, angle, angle, side. So, we have triangle DGF is congruent to triangle DEG. Now that we used AAS to prove that these two triangles are congruent, we can now assume that the legs of this isosceles triangle is also congruent to each other.